This is basic Greek grammar. In your syllabus, I'll have you look at the PLOs and the DLOs and all of that we do, and just point out some things. There are several learning outcomes that we want you to have for this class, and that is on page 2 of your syllabus. You should all have an electronic copy of it, I would hope. Anybody not have access to the new Joule system? Okay. At the bottom of page 2, here's what we want to accomplish in this class. These are our goals that we would like you to learn. Big picture. The big picture in grammar is very important. Grammar is the type of subject where you can get lost in micro details, and that's not what you want to do. Keep the big picture. So on what we want you to learn, obviously the basics of Greek exegesis. You're going to get a lot of nuts and bolts and parts. And when I was putting together toys for my kids at birthday or Christmas, I always loved the picture of whatever I was putting together because it gave me the whole. But those exploded diagrams are made for engineers that love that detail, excruciating detail. You want to try to keep the big picture here, and we're going to give you a lot of parts. Don't be discouraged by the parts, because we'll try to keep this looking at where we're going, the goals of which we're trying to reach. But there's going to be a lot of exploded parts diagrams. And if you're an engineer, you'll love it. But if you're not an engineer, that may discourage you at times. Don't be, because all of a sudden, that will come together and you'll see the big picture of why we're doing it. So we're going to give you the nuts and bolts. We want you also to grasp a basic knowledge of New Testament grammar. Now, the grammar we study is not prescriptive. In other words, we're not saying how they must do grammar. We're showing you how they did grammar. We're going to describe how they did things. Grammar is dictated by people. It's not like laws of physics. While our brains are hardwired for language, from the moment that God created Adam and interacted with him, naming the animals in creation, here, grammar has to be descriptive of what the Greeks did, what the New Testament writers did. We're just going to describe it to you. They're going to do things that you may find unusual, but it's going to be good Greek. To be honest with you, you can't say ain't simply for the fact that a group or a committee met together and said that was not appropriate. But there's nothing really intrinsically inappropriate. It's just that it's not grammatically acceptable to the mores of people. But we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at how they did it. And sometimes you'll ask, why did they do it that way? Well, ours is a descriptive, not a prescriptive grammar of how they should have done something, but just how that they did it. So keep that in mind. Next, you're going to learn further on translating New Testament text with increasing capability. All of you have had beginning Greek. Some of you I recognize from my Gladiator Greek course. Some of you are new to me, but we will graft you in to the olive tree. It will be great suffering, but we will graft you in to the olive tree. And in our class, there are 2 books, but especially one that we'll concentrate on. The first one is Colossians. You will start out translating Colossians, and when we come into class, there will be quizzes over verses in Colossians according to the translation schedule. Did everybody see the translation schedule? So what is due for Thursday? One through 10, right? Really? I could have a quiz. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together, I could have a quiz. I will look at that schedule, and I may revise that for you to make it one. For sure, it's 1 through 10 Thursday. I will revise the schedule, because today is just merely introduction to an overview of what we'll be doing. So please note it'll be 1 through 10, and I'll revise that schedule and resubmit it to Jewel on that. So we'll look first at Colossians, and then there's a twin epistle of Colossians known as Ephesians. And you will become, throughout this year, well-versed in Ephesians. That will be our concentration here. That you will know when we are done with grammar and exegesis, you will be very conversant with the grammar and critical issues in Ephesians, so that if you left here and wanted to do a sermon in a candidating situation, all you'll have to do is take out your things in Ephesians, and you'll be able to work up something and preach a whole series through Ephesians to make sure you know that book well. So we will get to know Ephesians well. It's one of my favorite Pauline epistles. So please take a look at those 2 epistles, which we will go, and that will help us translate New Testament texts. And then we want to have an increased mastery of vocabulary, and that will be done through all that you'll interact with in the grammar and all that you will interact in through Ephesians and Colossians. Are there any questions now on those big goals that we will try to meet? If not, let's turn the page. Please note the rubrics. Rubrics are standards of measurement that we will use when you submit work. It gives you an idea of our expectations, of what standards will be maintained for what you submit in work. Take a look at those rubrics. There's one for grammar quizzes. There's one for examinations through there. And that will give you an idea so that you are fully conversant with how the grades come out. All right. Let's talk about the textbooks. First thing I want you to note is that our main grammar textbook is Dan Wallace, Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics. Has everybody obtained a copy of Wallace's work? Is anybody here that does not have a copy of Wallace's work? I would suggest that as quickly as possible you obtain that. We will be moving into grammar as of Thursday after the quiz, and the quiz is over. Colossians 1 through 10. So we'll need you to have that. Now let me talk Andrei Baranov. It is not. Thank you, Andrei. Could you bring that up to me? Andrei brings up a good question. Thank you. I'll give this back to you. There are 2 forms that Wallace takes. There is the one that Andrei brought up, which is an abbreviated edition. It contains much of what the full edition has, except that a lot of the examples have been perhaps removed, and this is the abbreviated version. This would be great, in my opinion, for grammar in Bible colleges, undergraduate work, but at the Master's Seminary, you need the full, the thick. Look at this. We're going to give you your money's worth. Look at the thickness here. Just think of that. And we're going to read, say it with me, the whole thing. Okay? So I'll bring this back to you, Andre. This would be helpful to you, especially if you want to see maybe the bigger picture. But we will need the other copy I think it's blue now. There it is, right there. Joe has the blue, and that's what we need. So this looks like a library copy, Andre. All right, let's talk about grammars for a little bit. Because I use a grammar does not necessarily mean that I endorse everything in the grammar. You have to be careful. Any book you use does not mean that you should fully endorse anything at any time. Paul told Christians, and we'll find this out more in next semester, take how many thoughts captive? Somebody read that for me in 2 Corinthians 10:5. Who's got it?
I got it. We're destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ.
How many thoughts are you to do? I don't care what the source is. Paul didn't give any exceptions, did he? You take every thought a prisoner is what that means. You will not stand before the Lord and say, but Lord, Farnell used that grammar. I thought it was okay, so I just accepted everything in it. You will stand before the Lord to give an account. By the way, a lot of you guys here, let me not discourage you, but James says teachers have this is a tough business because you're going to answer to the Lord for what you taught your sheep. It scares me. Take every thought captive, regardless of the source. That means I got to tell you some things about grammars. Grammars are not neutral. Grammars will involve interpretation. Anytime you get into interpretation, you start to get into adding thoughts to the text that may be actually there or may not be. So you got to take every thought captive. Somebody read for me Colossians 2:8. Colossians 2:8. Who's got it?
See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ.
Oh, that can't possibly apply to fundamentalists. That only applies to liberals, right? Do you know what Jesus criticized the fundamental? You know who the fundamentalists of Jesus' day were? What were they called? Matter of fact, Jesus preached more on hell to the Pharisee fundamentalists than any other group. Do you know what he criticized them the most for besides hypocrisy? They no longer were students of God's Word. They were following the traditions of men. It is no different today. The Master's Seminary calls you men forth to be faithful, loyal servants of Jesus Christ and Him alone. Not the traditions of men. Be zealous for Jesus. Do you know what the word Christian means? You know what it meant originally? Some of my gladiators have already heard this, haven't you? What does the word Christian originally mean? Christian. Little Christ. I don't think we could do any more wondrous work than to keep you from the traditions of men, to be biblicists. and make you into people who role model Jesus in his pastoring and in his teaching. But traditions of men are very difficult. So I've chosen Wallace. Why did I choose Wallace? Well, right now it's the most up-to-date grammar. It partakes of much of the research at the end of the 20th century and is very well organized. I did not choose Dana and Manny. And there are reasons for that. And I'm going to be pointing that out to you. But Dana and Manny is based on A.T. Robertson. A.T. Robertson was the premier grammar in the early 1900s. It is valuable, but it is outdated. It has scattered thinking. It's poorly organized. Many things that Robertson says has fallen out of favor. And Dana and Manny is based on that. For an example, Dana and Manny's view of Sharp's rule has been misapplied, unfortunately, by several generations, and that is why Sharp's rule fell into disrepute. We'll talk about that. So Dana and Manny being somewhat the abbreviated version, I believe, if I'm correct, that Dana and Manny even had Robertson as their professor. They're not as current as they could be. So we've chosen Wallace. However, I'm going to be honest with you, I do have points in Wallace in which I will fervently disagree. I will point them out to you today. So we will pursue an eclectic approach. But merely because I use Wallace does not mean that you should drop your guard and just accept. I've read 2 scripture verses to you, yes? One of my favorite shows was The X-Files. And the theme of The X-Files was, the truth is out there, trust no one. So you're going to have to say, Holy Spirit, help me see. There is the teaching ministry of the Holy Spirit. Remember in 1 John 3 for my guys that had Greek? There is the teaching ministry of the Holy Spirit. There's a built-in, for every believer, there's a built-in lie detector. Use that. Ask the Lord to help you. I'm going to point out things in Wallace that I don't necessarily agree with. So don't take this as a wholehearted endorsement. It's just the most current, and it has things that are good grammatical issues. But as I point out these things, I want you to be aware that some of the comments in this grammar are problematic. So we will read through Dan. I will give you examples of this as I go through, but are there any questions on the grammar? I could give you more. But I think I'll use the grammar lecture to point these out, that we use it, but we use it with discernment. Any questions? You guys are awful quiet this morning. Okay. Next. Sake Kubo. That is not a drink. That is a reader's lexicon to the Greek New Testament. Now, in the old days, Greek professors were really tough. And they wouldn't allow this kind of a help because they wanted you to get familiar with the dictionary. But I want you to, I know you're busy in ministry, you're busy doing things. I want you to have some helps. There's nothing wrong with that. The earlier generation of Greek professors, no helps. Do it the hard way. That isn't necessarily the best way. And there were some forbidden things. How many of you have ever heard of the story of Achan? In the Old Testament, Achan, I think it was Ai they were going to attack. And they were told, don't touch certain things. But guess what Achan did? He took something. So they were defeated at Ai. And so they began to inquire as why didn't the Lord give us victory? Well, victory comes through blessing for obedience. And Achan had taken something and hidden it. And Joshua, I love the way he did it. Come on, my son. Fess up. Did you take something, the accursed thing? And Achan kind of, come on, fess up, Joshua. It's okay, it's okay. And Achan said, yeah, here it is. And then Joshua stoned his whole family. So that's how Greek professors of old treated these things. This was the sin of Achan, and they would hack you to pieces. Now, I have swords in my office, but I'm a nonviolent person. So I allow helps in here. I'm going to make another statement that'll get me in trouble as a Greek professor. Some of the most profound preachers were the worst at Greek. As a matter of fact, as a Greek professor, the ones that scare me the most as students are the ones that are good at languages. Because they'll get confident in themselves. And they won't rely upon the Lord. And they make the worst preachers. Because they'll say, oh, I know why the Lord chose me. I'm good at grammar. I am smart. Oh, the Lord has great taste and He chose me. These are the subtle thoughts that can come in. But I have heard some of the worst preaching by some of the greatest managers of language because they think every detail is excruciatingly important, and the congregation hears their preaching and they go, So I want to encourage you, if you struggle in Greek, good. It is not by might nor by power, but how? Peter's a great example of that. Peter was always putting his foot in his mouth. But you know there's a key in the book of Acts that is not mentioned much. Starting in Acts chapter 2 at the day of Pentecost, it said Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, got up, and man, all of a sudden could he preach. He didn't go to the Master's Seminary. Matter of fact, he didn't go to seminary at all. What?
He knew Greek.
He knew Greek. Probably just Aramaic at that point. Remember now, he had trouble with accepting Gentiles into the, not me, Lord, Acts 10. I'm not going to go near Cornelius. I don't touch those people. Lord had to work with him a little bit. But you see, the key to great preaching is never the grammar you use or the intelligence you have. It is always filled with the Spirit. God can take untrained and unlearned men and make them into powerful, preachers. He can overcome any of your weakness. I hope you're weak. It's better. Paul said, after all it was done, I glory in weaknesses. That's not easy. That takes a whole lifetime to get used to that one. So if you're good at Greek, you're in grave danger. Because the greatest sin in the world, in the universe, is pride. Some of the best guys at Greek have done some awful things. And I'll make another comment that makes me a heretic. Greek, although it clarifies a lot, sometimes it doesn't contribute to our understanding, and sometimes it may even make it harder. So don't think that we're giving you the keys that will lock all the knowledge. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But listen to me. If you're not good at Greek, you can use helps. Don't be ashamed about it. It's okay. But the greatest preachers in the world are not the guys that are good with languages per se. It are those that say, Lord, I am a weak vessel. Help me this morning. Fill me with your Spirit. If we produce those kind of men at the Master's Seminary that are filled with God's Spirit and compassionate shepherds of their people, have a pastor's heart, we will do well. So you can have helps. That means sake kubo. It's a reader's lexicon. How many got that? How many have that? Okay. Many of you may have Bible programs. Logos, Bible Works. That's okay. For the quizzes, please don't activate the parsing guides or anything. Try not to go to the helps unless you have to. But if you have to, okay. But try to resist. But it's okay to have helps. Even at times, parsing guides. Try to stay away from them, but every once in a while they will, look at me, look at me. You'll hear them call to you. And at first you'll say, no, I can't, no. But come over here. No. Oh, just take a look. No. But it's okay if you have to. Try not to. But remember, in weakness made strong. Then you'll need a UBS Greek New Testament. I know that you have electronic versions, and those are great, but it would be good if you did obtain a physical copy of the Greek New Testament. Depending on your budget, I know it's very difficult in this economy, but get yourself a Greek New Testament, UBS 4th Revised, or Nestle Aland is fine. It's the same text. Let's talk about that for a second. This is my old 3rd edition. I love the font on it. I didn't like the 4th edition font, so I kept my old 3rd. Anybody have a Nestle Aland? Okay, Steve? Well, this is both Greek and Hebrew. Anybody know the difference between the Nestle Aland that's in here? Sometimes they're blue, and the red one? Here are the two essential things. The texts are the same. The committees are the same. So the Greek text here and the Greek text here are identical. So it's okay if you have the blue or this one. The font's different, but there are some essential differences. This is a translator's Greek New Testament. So this one has a different apparatus below the text. It gives you a punctuation apparatus, and it doesn't give you as many textual problems. Interesting thing is, when it does treat a textual problem, it will go into greater depth in this one than this one does. But this Nestle text is used more for textual criticism because it gives many more textual problems. They're not really big problems, but it does give you more textual problems in here, and doesn't have a punctuation apparatus. This one does, because this is a translator's. So that's the essential difference. You can use either one, But I do request this, what is very helpful, and thank you, Steve. Did I give you back your, okay, because it's the library copy, so it wouldn't be good for me to, what was I talking about?
Translators is good to go. Edition.
Oh, you need a dictionary. Thank you. They don't call me Mr. Bagoo for nothing. You need a dictionary, and this is the one. If you take the UBS, it has a dictionary in the back. Does that? I don't have one of those. I can't afford them. Does the one with the Old Testament have a dictionary in there? Okay, so this great advantage of this is it will give you a little dictionary. You can't use it during the quizzes, but it's great when you're translating to have a little dictionary. And it is a nice, succinct, brief dictionary. It's not thorough, but it's a brief. Anything questions now on the text?
I don't have access to a 4th edition right now, but I could borrow a 3rd edition. Is there a big difference between the two?
The text is, well, yes, there's been some small revisions. I don't think it will matter. It depends on your budget. But the goal is the 4th edition revised. Okay? Any other questions on the text? So this is a translator's text. That's why most or many Greek exegesis classes will require this one, because we're not teaching you textual criticism. Okay, let's look at the next thing. There are 2 others. We won't deal with them too much now, but to get them now would be good, and that is John Grasmick's Principles and Practice of Exegesis. That will especially come in the 2nd semester. Nonetheless, it does have some information that is good for us to look at. Also, Bach and Fanning's Interpreting the New Testament Text. This contains some basic good material on exegesis, word studies, grammatical analysis, and we will be looking at that. Those 2, though, will focus mostly on next semester, but I want to have them mentioned now because we will hit the ground running for 604, and it's good to have that. The essential still would be Wallace, a Greek New Testament, and Sake Kubo. Then a small little booklet, but helpful, is Francis Xavier Braun, English Grammar for Language Students. One of the great things about going over Greek is if you do struggle with grammar, and that's a lot of things now in high school and college that guys aren't getting, is basic grammar. Students are not getting that. And so if you struggle with English grammar, Greek will help you greatly in understanding English grammar. Remember, after the Tower of Babel, there was one language. After the Tower of Babel, that's why I will remind you of the biblical viewpoint on language. Today it's been inundated with evolutionary linguistics. Not that linguistics is all bad, but much of it is evolutionary. And even A.T. Robertson was impacted by that. He would talk about the caveman's grunt. Well, he grew up in the day in which evolution was starting to reign supreme. Cavemen didn't grunt. If there were cavemen, there were after the flood, because they had to find a place to stay until they could have enough trees and resources to rebuild society. But there was no caveman grunt. Adam could speak hardwired from the beginning because language is pre-programmed into our brains. But today we're not getting good grammar. So Francis Xavier Braun gives you some basics. But if you ever have any questions, if I use terms that you're not familiar with, say, hey, explain that to me. Because if you have, that's another thing I want to say. There is no stupid question except one. It is the question you don't ask. That's what a teacher is here for, to answer your questions. So if you have a question, you could be thinking, well, I'll look stupid. No, you won't. I drove my professors nuts because I wanted to know. I'm already nuts, so you can't drive me nuts. So ask questions about grammar should you have them. What does this mean? And if I can't answer it, I'll try to find an answer. Okay? Francis Xavier Braun. Some of you have English as a second language. How many are English as a second language? I greatly respect that because I've had Russian students who struggle in English and then have to learn grammar, Greek grammar, by English. So we've got to be sensitive to that. Let me know if you have any struggles there. We want to help. So the only stupid question is the one you fear will make you look bad. No, the only way you'll look bad is not to say it. So ask. Okay? I don't mind those questions. Sometimes that can be a learning experience in itself. Then, strongly recommended textbooks. Now, this one's expensive, and you don't have to have it right away. You precious seminary students, I have nothing but great respect for putting food on your family's table, coming to school, paying tuition. So this is one that you should reach as a goal. If you have the money, blessed are you. If not, but you should get the Scholar's Choice Dictionary for Greek is D-Bag. Dunker, Bauer, Ardent, Gingrich. I used to call it bagged. Bauer, Ardent, Gingrich, and Dunker. But then they switched the editor. So I think it's now D-Bag? B-Dag. Dyslexic. You know what I mean? B-Dag. I was going to say that, and then I thought, no, I think it's got it flipped in my mind. So that's the Scholar's Choice. But wait. Take how many thoughts captive? I have an article in the material for you in which the third edition of B-Dag, Jordan will jump on me if has brought in some philosophical, sociological agendas into some of their lexical definitions that you need to be aware of. So there is an article from the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society that I want you to read, warning you that even in dictionaries today, you need to be careful because sometimes people have a cultural, sociological, philosophical agenda that they're using even in definitions. And you want to note that. Any questions now? Those are the books. Tronway.
Which of these do you expect us to bring to class every day?
Wallace, for sure. And that reminds me, what I would like you to do also with Wallace, in the back of Wallace on page 726, everybody turn to page 726. Those of you who have a Wallace. The nice thing about Wallace is that a syntax summary is given from 726 all the way through. Now, some of you probably have this electronically. I know Wallace is available electronically on some of the Bible programs. I would like you to photostat page 726 through the end of Wallace so that when we start categorizing nouns or we start looking at classifications of verbs or we start looking at grammatical constructions, this summary will be a great aid for you. Instead of having to flip through that greatly thick book, You'll just have this syntax summary that really summarizes the rest of the grammar. So I would appreciate by next Tuesday, you have this photostated. Now, I don't know, you don't have to do the comb binding like I did, but you should have it in something where you can immediately reference it while we go through this. Okay? Page 726 through to the end, these syntax summaries are greatly helpful for you to get the big picture. It is so important in grammar to keep the big picture. Do not get lost in the piddly little details at times. Keep the big picture, and that's how learning will take place. This is the great resource for keeping the big picture on things. So that's by next Tuesday. All right, how will we grade for the semester? There will be 3 major exams. And I know you say on page 4, it says 4 major exams. Well, if you're nice to me and don't let anybody know, if you're nice, you're compassionate pastors of people, you're gentle and loving, you put the fun back into fundamentalism, I'll waive the 4th exam. Okay? Well, it won't be second class. Well, you have a good memory. 3rd class condition. If you should, then we will. We'll waive it. Most likely, we'll waive it. But I keep it there as a club. So anyway. These exams will be multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, short answer. If you had me for Gladiator Greek, you kind of have an idea of what it would be like. There may be some brief discussion questions, a paragraph or two, but it's mostly objective. Matching, true, false, fill in the blank, best answer. I always love to choose the best answer. It says choose the best in capital letters. That means that you got to think about the question a little bit. And we'll take a look at when those are due. Any questions on that? Next, there will be daily quizzes. It will be in correspondence to the translation schedule that I will revise and give to you. For this Thursday, I want to make it very clear that it's over Colossians 1:1 through 10. Now, for those of you who had 1 John, if we take a look at if you look at Wallace, well, I'll do it on the board. Easy Greek, 1 John. I'll show you where I'm taking this from. I'm taking this from the literary levels of New Testament Greek. Page 30. Yes. On page 30, and we'll go over this again, 1 John was easy. It's considered very simple, conversational, Wallace's term, I don't know if I would use it, but vulgar. Not in the sense that you understand it. It means it's very simple. That's what I love about John. John, the apostle, is someone that you can tell was transformed by the Lord. You know, John, when he was a disciple of Jesus, came across some Samaritans. John and James, they were called the sons of And they came to a village of Samaria in Luke chapter 9, and the Samaritans didn't want to let Jesus stay there or pass through. So John, being rather hard-nosed, said, Lord, James and John said, let's call fire down from heaven on them. Because he had the idea that only his little group of Jewish disciples, not these half-breed Samaritans, were worthy of the Jewish Messiah. And of course, when Jesus heard that, he said, that's a good idea, John, let's nuke them. What did he say? John, James, the Son of Man did not come to destroy lives, but to save lives. And it's interesting, when John writes this gospel, he's the guy that started out hating every ethnicity but his own. And then the Holy Spirit transformed him. Until in his life, he learned Greek. God sent him in Acts 8 to the Samaritans that he wanted to nuke. And then at the end of his life, he's pastoring some Gentile goyim, the dogs, churches. And he learned Greek. And you can feel the love. Couldn't you in Gladiator Greek feel the love? Well, not in Gladiator Greek, but you know what I mean, in John. So John is simple. But I've chosen Colossians and Ephesians because that's middle of the road. It's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This may be too soft. Luke, Acts, 2 Peter, Hebrews, and James are considered the tough books. Hard Greek. That I find interesting because James was Jesus' half-brother. James went and learned Greek so well that it is a literary Koine type of style, so that he could reach Hellenized Jews and Gentiles. This is an amazing thing, but we're going to strike the middle. And you'll do Colossians and Ephesians. So if you struggle in Colossians and Ephesians, yeah, it's harder than 1 John, but it's not as difficult as some of the others. So we try to strike the middle on that. So Colossians 1:1 through 10, on that, there will be quizzes. Here's what will happen. We will walk in the morning. I will hear your confessions. I will absolve you. And then I will give you the penance of a quiz, okay? And you'll parse the verbs and the verbals, and we'll explain what those terms mean. Turn it over, and you will write out the translation of the verse. So I'll pick some verses, and then I'll give you about 15, 20 minutes to do that. Then we grade in class. That's how we learn. By exchanging papers, we can grade and get a real quick response of what we did well and what we didn't. Now let me show you my scale. That reflects the rubrics here for the quizzes. Here, you ready? You miss 1 to 3, that's an A. You miss 4 to 6, that's a B. 7 through 11 is a C. Anything below this could be a D or an F or a G or an H. So with me, it's total aggregation of points. I try not to let 1 point break. I try to see aggregate points, big picture. I'm a big picture guy. So we'll walk in, we'll do that, and then I'll get them, have them back to you the next time. So you'll have quizzes. There may be a day when I choose not to. But plan on having quizzes every time there's a translation assignment, okay? And then collateral reading. There is going to be sehr viel collateral reading. Not only have I given you a grammar this thick, but I have uploaded in Joule a bunch of documents for you. And I probably will add to that list as time goes on. So be checking that list of, have you guys seen the uploaded PDF files? It would be probably best for you to make a physical copy of them, so you have them there. Okay? All right. So, the test will be 60, the quiz is 20, and the collateral reading will be 20. Any questions now on the assignments? I don't allow quiz makeup. If you miss, there is no makeup. It doesn't necessarily count against you, but it doesn't help you either. Did you guys, did any of your family in North Carolina get with Irene? Everybody okay? Did they get a lot of water and stuff? I saw some of the houses were flooded if you're closer to the ocean. So, Justin, how may I help you?
Principal parts.
Mm-hmm.
Are we having quizzes over those or tests over those? Or
Well, of course. Why would I give you stuff?
I didn't know if it was going to be the daily quizzes.
No. Please, that reminds me. Thank you for reminding me of that. Principal parts. We will explain principal parts to you, depending on who you had for your Greek professor. But we do assign principal parts because sometimes in translating a book of the Bible, you'll get stopped and go, what is that? And odds are dollars to donuts. It's because principal parts were not well recognized. So, you memorize them weekly, but I wouldn't probably test you on them until the quiz, but I know what students will do. They will wait till the quiz, but it will really help you in Colossians and Ephesians if you do them. Okay? Now, the best way to memorize vocabulary is another thing where I'm different from other Greek professors. I don't believe grocery-listed vocabulary does any good. Memorizing grocery lists doesn't do any good because it requires sheer force of memory. The best way to memorize Greek vocabulary is in the context of the Bible with associative learning, so that you can associate, and by one word coming up and then another word following, your mind links up the meanings of those words much more readily than just a sheer grocery list. So I do ask principal parts, but do know that it's very difficult just to grocery list those. I assume you know the vocabulary when we have a test, and I will tell you, have Colossians 1 and 2 ready to translate any part of it, and I will know you know the vocabulary, not by grocery listing testing you, but by whether you can look at Colossians and read it with facility like you would your native language. So there won't be traditional vocabulary grocery lists. That's just, to me, and what studies have found is that's not the most effective way to memorize anyway. Okay? Okay. All right, let's talk about absences. Try to be here. if you're going to be absent on a day of an exam, let me know. I mean, sometimes you can't help it, but try to let me know and we'll arrange for, if you do miss an exam, I'd rather have you back in class and then we'll arrange a time outside of class than for you to take an exam outside of class while we're learning something. So just communicate with me is the best way to do it. Okay? All right, that's the syllabus. If there are no other questions on the syllabus, let's look at the assignments. I gave you a schedule of assignments according to the 15 weeks. And here it is. This is what we will be covering. Now, I sometimes keep with this schedule and sometimes I don't, depending on the questions, the issues we get into. Every class has their unique personality. Eventually, the personality of this group will become known. And that means sometimes we may get ahead or usually a little bit behind in answering questions and dealing with issues. But this is, in theory, what we will attempt to cover. So please familiarize yourself with that. And we will hopefully at least try to follow that. And then you have your translating schedule. And I do apologize. Sure enough, I have to reissue that. By making it 1 through 10 for Thursday. Okay. Yes. Tronway.
On the assignments
Yeah.
schedule, if it says first hour read Wallace 12 to 30 for today, is that due today or will we do it?
It's due on the day it's assigned.
Do it the day it's assigned.
Now, I do know that the first day of class, some don't have Wallace. Some just got into the class. My teaching style is not rigidity. I know you precious guys have families. You have to work. About the only thing that will be consistent will be I will never let the quiz schedule vary. But if you do have trouble one day with the reading, try to catch up. But I am not my personality style is not rigidity on that. Because I know you precious guys have all sorts of work you're doing, churches, everything. So, but if I detect, and I have a little detector, that you're trying to snow me, please note that one phrase that hangs as the sword of Damocles, and I have 5 swords in my office, 2 helmets, a lot of instruments of violence. Please note, it says the professor reserves the right to grade. Who can find that in the syllabus? The professor reserves the right to what? Can you find it on the page of the syllabus?
Reserves the right to factor class attitude.
Class attitude into your final grade. And bad attitude gives you what? Bad tude gives you what? Good. I usually don't have to do it. But I will be watching. Okay? Tronway.
Also on the assignments, I noticed the font is a little weird for the principal parts. I know that came up for a few other people too.
I apologize. Jewel had to load fonts for the language class. And I don't know, how did it come out? I used BibleWorks, I think, font.
Mine came out little wingdings, and I had a Bible font.
Really?
Yeah, squigglies and mailboxes.
That's what you do is just highlight that and then choose the Greek font and it'll set it to the right.
Think so, Steve Downs?
I just did.
Officer Steve Downs, Downey Police Department says, and if it's a policeman, he get try it right now. Did it work?
No, it just makes it just.
I put it to symbol and some Greek letters came out, but I'm guessing the first principal part is ginomai, but it says theonomai. So it's a little funky.
Okay, how about if I make you a hard copy of that?
Yes.
Okay, Jordan, do me a favor. Email me and say, number one, we need a revised schedule of translating. Don't use Italian. I'm still struggling with Greek there, Jordan. And two, we need a physical copy of the schedule of assignments. And that way we'll overcome that. Sorry, but what happened was I noticed when I put it up on Joule, the Greek font didn't come out, and I don't think we've perfected the new system yet. Physical copy, revised translation schedule, and two, physical copy of the subjects that we will be discussing, day-to-day, weekly subjects. And that way, mine will print out the font that way. Andre?
PDF of it, just make a PDF file.
I could, but let me say this. They're going to be giving the Adobe Professional. So I'll try, and if it doesn't make it with what I have, when they put Adobe Professional on my computer, then I'll resend it again. You will get it. But if it's not until the first exam, we have time. That's why I don't. We'll get there.
There's a really quick program called Qt PDF that acts like a printer. Works really well.
Qt?
I know, I'm sorry, bad name.
Could you send me an email? Did you send me the email?
Sent it.
Okay. Tell me, hey Maximus, the cute PDF. All right. We have not taken a break. And what I'll probably do is let you out early so that you can get your materials, and we will start the grammar lecture. Already I'm behind, but that's okay. We will start the grammar lecture Thursday after the quiz. Any final questions before we let you go? Yes, sir. I don't know your name.
My name is Belland.
Bellin?
Yeah.
Okay, Bellin, what can I do for you?
I was just wondering how you wanted us to prepare the translation assignments.
Well, here's another way I'm different from a lot of Greek professors. This is graduate school. Therefore, that's up to you. You will parse and translate anything in Colossians 1:1 through 10. So however you need to prepare that. Some guys love to write things down. If you're real good at languages, some guys just kind of look at their Greek New Testament and know the parsing. So I'm not going to grade you on... I'm not the type of guy that's going to go, do you have the translation, you know? This is not me, because you're in graduate school. You're paying, but I do detect things. I look stupid, I act stupid, I am stupid, but I'm not stupid, so I'll be watching. So it's up to you. I leave that with you. Variety is the spice of life. Different strokes for different folks, and whatever works for you on that, okay? But I don't. Now, Gladiator, I made you guys physical copies. But now you're in 603. So do whatever you'd like to do. But the quiz will show how you've done. Anything else? Wait, there was another question, I thought. If not, I will get you those that Jordan emailed me. And how were those 2 weeks away from Gladiator, by the way?
Sad, very sad.
Sad.
Very sad.
So what can we do for you?
Well, I was just curious if officers.
This is Hebrew.
Well,
This
there's
is
Greek
what,
in
you know, look, you know what the early church used? The Septuagint. That was Greek. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, go ahead. What did you need to know?
Well, I just thought since it was the end of the class, end of the tape, I could ask this question. If Officer Steve Downs was the one who pulled you over that day.
No, it was not.
thought
Did I tell you how to get even with your Greek professor? Let me tell you that story. We'll put this on unless he's turned it out. Have you turned it out, Joshua?
Still recording.
Okay, I'll tell you the story. I had a guy that was in my Greek class. He suffered through Greek with me, the mental insanity and everything. And I have a church. I pastor in Ventura County, and the speed limit on 126 is 55 miles per hour. So this is confess your sins to one another that you may be healed. James 5, 1 through 3. And we were going home. The kids were in the car. You know, and I'm tired from the day, and I wasn't paying attention. And all of a sudden, man, I turned a corner around 126. And I was going over the speed limit. You know, just, you know. And I turned the corner, and there's a California Highway Patrol sitting there in the black and white. As you go, because you can't see, if they're right just beyond it, you can't see them. I knew I'd had it. I was in the 70s when I passed him by, and sure enough, he lit that car up like a Christmas tree and pulled me over. And this is how to get even with your Greek professor, I'll tell you. So I saw the guy, he had those glasses, you know, that you can't see through. Undoes his belt buckle like that, you know, walks up. And my kids were saying in the car, Daddy's gonna get a ticket. I said, thanks a lot, my wife said. See, you shouldn't be speeding. Comforters of Job in the car with me, you know what I mean? And so he comes up on the passenger side. My wife rolls down the window. And I don't know, I couldn't, it's just those glasses you can't see through, you know. And I put out my license like this, my hands shaking like that. He says, how's Greek class?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. And I realized it was one of my Greek students who worked for the Highway Patrol. So he pulled over his Greek professor. But he told me this, that there's a lot of people associated with the organization that he has pulled over on 126. He didn't tell me who they were, but he gave me a list if I need it. Should I have to open up, you know? So anyway, yeah, I got arrested by you're under technical arrest at that point, you know that. So yeah, it was accidental. I want you to know, I want you to know my Greek students several times in this summer, and they will be nameless, passed me up like I was sitting still. Yeah? So anyway.
45 miles an hour and 65 people.
Notice how a guilty conscience can work very well. See? Okay. Yeah, that's how so he did not. Well, do I get him in trouble? He decided not to cite me. But one of my church ladies at my church, I told that story in a sermon illustration one time. She says, he should have given you a ticket, Pastor. So some people get upset that he did not cite me, but I'm so thankful that he didn't cite me. So anyway.